And this would solidify her reputation as being a tantalizing black widow. She did not seem like a very nice lady. Just saying. Hey guys, welcome back, or welcome to my channel if you're new here. My name is Shayna, and in my little corner of the internet, we talk about spooky history of all kinds. If that sounds like something you're interested in, be sure to hit that subscribe button and notification bell because I upload every week. Or if podcasts are more your thing, I do have a podcast called Spooky History with Shayna Blake, and that is where the audio of all of my videos go. So I will be sure to have a link down in the description for you. Now, I was down for a few weeks, but I am back with a very old but pretty interesting story that I've been really wanting to share. Now today, we're going to be talking about the deadly love triangle of Milwaukee, Wisconsin. So let's talk about Dolly and Fred Oesterreich, or Oesterreich. I think it's Oesterreich or Oesterreich, not sure. But according to Wikipedia, Dolly was born as Walburga Korschel in 1880 to German immigrant parents. It's not super clear on if she was born in Imperial Germany or if she was born shortly after her parents came here to the US. But she did grow up in Milwaukee, Wisconsin in a small community that had several German immigrants. Now, when she was only 12 years old, she would start to work at a textile mill that was owned by Fred William Oesterreich, who was a German immigrant himself, and he had become pretty successful and would hire other German immigrants to work for him. Now, Dolly was known as a very attractive and charismatic girl who made friends pretty easily. She would end up getting Fred's attention as she got older, and they would get married when Dolly was only 17. She was pretty popular in the factory among the workers. She would often make peace and was known to resolve labor disputes by acting as a mediator. The workers saw her as one of them because she worked alongside them for so many years, but with her being married to the boss, she was able to get both sides to listen to her. Now, it's said that her and Fred's marriage was happy at first, but then the unimaginable happened, and they would end up losing their one and only child just before his 10th birthday. And this would unfortunately put a wedge between them. It was soon after this that rumors would start to spread about how Dolly would bring many lovers to their home during the day while Fred was at work. And Fred was known as a very hard-working man. He was dedicated to his job, so he would work really long hours. Not much is said about his early life though. But Dolly and Fred's relationship would continue on despite the loss of their child, and then things would start to change for Dolly in 1913, and this is when she met a 17-year-old boy named Otto Sennhuber. Otto was working for Fred at the factory as a sewing machine repairman. She was instantly smitten by him, which I find kind of gross because at this time Dolly was like 33 years old, but different times back then. And come to think of it, I don't even know how old Fred was when him and Dolly got married. That's interesting. Let me know if you know, because I couldn't find it. I really couldn't. I did try to look. I could have just overlooked it. So let me know if you know if there's like a huge age gap. I'm sure there is. So, like I said, different times back then. Now, one day, Dolly would complain to Fred that her sewing machine at home wasn't working properly and that she needed someone to come fix it, knowing that Fred would send over Otto. It said that she greeted Otto at the door wearing nothing more than stockings and a robe.
Hey, how you doing?
Now, it was during this visit that their romance would start. At first, their relationship was pretty open. They didn't try hard to hide what was going on, so given the circumstances, Fred would find out about the affair and would end up confronting Dolly. She would vow to Fred that she would end the affair with Otto, but she was lying through her teeth because she had other plans. Instead of calling it quits with Otto, she would convince him to quit his job and move into Dolly and Fred's attic at their house.
Stop it. Get some help.
Otto actually agreed to this arrangement, and the couple would develop a daily routine. Each morning, as soon as Fred would leave for work, Otto would emerge from his attic hiding place. Otto and Dolly would do household chores together, among other things. Then, just before Fred was known to come home for the evening, Otto would retreat back to the attic where he would have a cot, a bucket, and a score of books to keep him busy. Sounds like he's living the dream. And Dolly, she would pretend to be the dutiful and faithful wife to her husband.
Wow, that's messed up.
Now, Fred wasn't dumb. He could sense that something was off and strange around the house, but he couldn't quite figure it out. He would notice that quite a bit of food was missing from the icebox, or fridge that we call now, and he would even hear noises coming from the attic. But when he would bring this up to Dolly, she would reassure him that nothing was weird and that he just had an overactive imagination. Now, Fred did drink a lot of alcohol, so I'm assuming it's really because he knew his marriage wasn't perfect, and him working long hours did put a lot of stress on him, but he maybe just chalked it down to that. I don't know. Either way, he didn't really ask her anymore about it. But the three would share a home without Fred even knowing. Then in 1918, Fred would decide to open a new factory on the West Coast and decided to relocate to LA. Dolly would tell Fred that she would agree to move on one condition, and that's that their new home would have to have an attic. Now, Fred thought this was kind of an odd request, but agreed that he would find a home with an attic. Almost immediately after the new home was purchased, Otto would leave before Dolly and Fred so he could set up his new home in the attic of the new house. And Fred was none the wiser. This little love triangle would continue just as it did before until August 22nd of 1922. And that's the day Fred Oesterreich was shot and killed in his living room. He was shot 3 times by a .25 caliber pistol. As Fred lay in a pool of his own blood from the bullet hole to his head and 2 to his chest, Dolly and Otto would come up with a plan to make it look like intruders came into their home and killed Fred. Otto would lock Dolly into a second-floor closet, turning the lock from the outside. Then he would go and hide in the attic. Not long after she was found, Dolly would claim to the police that she was pushed into the closet as she was hanging the fur coat she'd worn that evening. But the police weren't really buying her story. They thought it was very odd that nothing from the home was taken, and there seems to be no clear motive for Fred's murder. Eventually, the fabricated story would begin to unravel, and Dolly would be arrested on July 12th of 1923. While she was in jail, she would ask her attorney to buy groceries for her seemingly empty house. And when he asked her why she would need groceries if no one was staying at her home, that's when she would reveal to him that a man named Otto was living in her attic. She instructed him to purchase the groceries for this man, and then once he got to the house, the attorney was then to tap twice on the attic door to let Otto know it was safe to come out of hiding. Now, when the attorney went to go do this deed for Dolly, I believe it was this time when Otto left Dolly for good. I couldn't find exactly, but I'm pretty sure this is when he left and just didn't come back. And I think this might have really pushed Dolly into what she does next, because it was soon after this that Dolly would end up telling the police her side of the story on what happened to her husband that night. And she would tell them that the night of August 22nd in 1922, her and Fred were arguing. Otto overheard what was going on and feared that Fred would hurt Dolly, so he rushed out of the attic to defend her. Now, it's said that Fred was super surprised and angered when he saw Otto. I mean, wouldn't you be? So Fred would start to charge Otto, and that's when Otto shot Fred. Now, this story shocked authorities, and this became a very juicy story for its time and would end up making the front page news across the country. Now, people would call Otto the Bat Boy, and Dolly was painted as a lusty woman with an insatiable sexual appetite. And they weren't really wrong. She would begin an affair with her own attorney, who was Herman S. Shapiro, as well as a Milwaukee man named Roy H. Klum. And this would solidify her reputation as being a tantalizing black widow. She did not seem like a very nice lady. Just saying. Now, however, after years of crazy headlines about this case, as well as many indictments, Dolly is left a very wealthy woman, and unfortunately, no one serves jail time for Fred's murder. Otto had apparently claimed that he was enslaved by Dolly, but despite this, the jury would still find Otto guilty. But at this point, the statute of limitations had run out, and Otto was 43 years old at this time, and he walked free. They couldn't put him behind bars because too much time had passed. Now, I really feel that Fred was done wrong. I really do. I mean, he was paying for living space and food for a man who was living in his attic, and he had no idea. Super sad what happened to Fred, honestly. And I'm not really convinced that Otto was the one that killed Fred either. I think that Otto willingly moved in with Dolly at first, and then after a while maybe felt like he was being held captive there. Now, I know he did leave the old house and went to the new house willingly, and he could have escaped, right? But when people are put in such an isolating and toxic situation like that, it's possible that he was just too scared to see what happened if he did leave Dolly. I mean, no one in their right mind, that I would think, would want to hide in an attic and use a bucket as a bathroom their whole lives, and to only come down when it's convenient for the person that's hiding you. It just doesn't sound right, you know? So I think it's very possible that Dolly murdered her husband and had Otto take the fall for it when he left after being discovered by the attorney, but that's just my opinion. Who knows? But as you can imagine, this story was embraced by Hollywood. The film called The Bliss of Mrs. Blossom was released in 1968. Then in 1995, a film called The Man in the Attic, starring a young Neil Patrick Harris, who played the role of a locked up lover.
Challenge accepted.
There are many people who are captivated by this story. I mean, it's a crazy story. And today, the physical traces that the Oesterreichs ever lived in Milwaukee is pretty much gone. The factory that was there had closed down years ago, and the home that the three shared is gone, if I remember correctly. The only thing that still remains of the family is their son's grave at the Holy Trinity Cemetery. But that is the infamous story of the deadly love triangle of Milwaukee, Wisconsin. What'd you guys think? Weird, huh? Let me know what you guys thought down in the comments. I want to know if you think Dolly did it, and I want to know if you think Otto did it. I want to know what you guys think altogether, because you guys can come up with really good theories. I don't know. I just don't feel like Otto was to blame in this, but I really don't know. This happened so long ago, you know? But also, I want you guys to give me some video ideas. Sometimes I get blank and I have to dig for stories that I think would be interesting, but some of them have been covered so many times by people on YouTube and podcasts, and I want to talk about stuff that you guys haven't exactly heard about, you know, new stuff, old stuff, but new to us, if that makes sense. If you think of anything, let me know. You can either comment or swing over to my Instagram and send me a message. But that's going to be it for me today, guys. I hope you enjoyed my content. If you did, be sure to hit that subscribe button and notification bell. Or if you're listening to my podcast, please leave me a review if you can. Either way, I'm just happy you guys are here watching and listening. I hope you all have a very blessed week, and I will see you all later. Bye.